Well, good afternoon and welcome to another chat, a memo chat, chat. I guess we're doing a memo chat, Thomas.
Is that what this is called?
oh yeah, yeah. That's what the title
Interesting.
says. I'm Dr. Blake Martin and with me is Dr. Thomas Karakolis. How you doing, Thomas?
Oh, it's been a good day today, Blake. I'll tell you that
Yeah,
much.
good,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. How about
Glad to
you?
hear. I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I feel like I
Good,
was
good.
productive. I did the things I was supposed to do, right?
That's always a good feeling, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, some days, you kind of spin your wheels, and other days you kind of feel like you're making it happen. And today was one
Excellent.
of the yeah.
Excellent.
So,
Um,
what?
what do
Sorry.
you want to talk about today? Is what I was
Well,
wondering.
I'll tell you. I want to talk about the relationship between cognitive performance and activity. So, does it make a difference? Does like exercising make a difference? And yeah, that sort of thing. So that's
Interesting you bring that up, and maybe I'll start with a bit of an anecdote here. And I know you've done kind of some endurance sports, and you've competed, I'm sure, at some things like
hmm
marathons or triathlons. And anecdotally, uh, there definitely at times can be a negative relationship between cognitive performance and physical activity. And by that, I mean, I remember I was doing one of the first triathlons I did. It's probably, I think, the second or the third one. And I think it was a sprint distance triathlon. It wasn't
right,
Olympic or anything
right,
like that. So it was a 5K run
right.
at the end, and I was just gassed. And I was racing with a couple of friends of mine. They were also in the races, and I wasn't doing so well. It was a windy, cold, rainy day that we did this, and I was just trying to finish, and I was trying to figure out what my splits would be, and I was doing mental math as I was running to see what kind of splits I would need to make my goal time at the end. I
Right.
don't want to I don't want to mention what my times were because it's embarrassing now.
Yeah,
But
but you did
um,
it. You did it.
no, no,
I
I
mean,
didn't. I
that's
didn't. I didn't actually make it.
okay.
And the point is, I actually wasn't even close. I didn't have a chance at it. But the mental math I was doing was just all completely wrong.
Right.
And we had driven to this triathlon about an hour away from where I lived at the time, and it was a friend of mine drove together. His dad actually drove us there, and I was trying to explain in the car ride home, and this was like half an hour after the race, what my mental math was. And my buddy Dave was just kind of sitting there smiling and laughing and didn't really understand because I think he was also like physically drained, but also didn't like to the point where his cognitive abilities were also severely diminished. And so his dad just turns around and is like, none of what you just said makes like even close to any sense at all. Like the math is just terrible when you were trying to calculate your splits. And I'm like, yeah, I know that's what happens when you like exerted beyond a certain point. Your cognitive performance diminishes extremely
Yeah.
when you're extremely physically exerted. So
So
have you ever experienced that, or is there any literature to back that
Oh
up?
yeah, and there definitely is. It's called the hypofrontality hypothesis, and it has to do with depleting certain neurochemicals and energy, and just your ability to deal with stuff while you are in the middle of an endurance sport. And interestingly enough, math is one of the things that when they've done some of this research, they've actually had people do task or math tasks, or sometimes they'll do what's called an n back task, which is where you have to recall a sequence of numbers from however many back previous, and
Mm-hmm,
you have
mm-hmm.
to try to recall them. That's one of the tasks that they do. But overall, though, and I think that that's true when we're in the midst of especially a long endurance exercise, we do deplete resources that are necessary for thinking. However, here's where it gets interesting. The thing is that overall, overall fitness, that there with overall fitness, there's a correlation between cognitive performance and overall fitness. So people who have even when you consider all other things together, when you consider a person's education and when you consider their socioeconomic status and other stuff like that, when you look at their overall fitness level, and this is cardiorespiratory fitness specifically that they're talking about, especially aerobic fitness, they find that people who have higher fitness have better cognitive performance overall when all other factors are considered.
So are you saying being more fit can actually make you smarter?
Well, no, I'm not necessarily saying that that there's a causal relationship. I'm saying that they correlate one with another.
Okay. I
How
didn't mean to pin you down on that.
No, no, and I think it's important that you do. However, with that being said, um, people who are really highly fit, like highly fit individuals, they have an advantage for cognitive performance during the cognitive performance during exercise and immediately after. Low fit individuals, they perform poorly during these activities, but they improve immediately afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they
So
they yeah, say it again, please.
high fit
Yep.
people, they show an advantage for cognitive performance during
During
exercise and
and
immediately
after.
after. Low
Low fit
fit
people.
individuals, sorry, I should say moderately fit people too. I should talk about them because I missed them completely. They enjoy a modest benefit during exercise, but no benefit after. And then low
Okay.
fit individuals
Yep.
perform more poorly during exercise and improve immediately after. So I'm not saying
Interesting.
that you're low fit, Thomas, but when we contrast you with people who are kind of in the performance elite kind of categories, your cognitive benefit may not have enjoyed an improvement as much as theirs would.
Yeah, okay. So I'm wondering actually that makes an interesting segue into what I was thinking. And so my question is kind of open-ended, but I wonder in those studies that you're referencing um how they measured like physical activity and almost like exertion level because
Right.
if they don't normalize it to uh, the person's physical fitness level, you could end up having a situation where there's a confounding factor of level of exertion because I remember when I was at the University of Waterloo, there was another lab that had done some studies in this area looking at the relationship between level of exertion during your physical activity and cognitive performance. And what they found was what's called an inverted U shape,
Yeah.
or you could call it lowercase n. I don't know why they don't call it lowercase n, but inverted U also makes sense. But it's basically a curve. And so what happens is
Because an N has a stick on it,
that's
doesn't
true.
it?
Yeah, and then there's no stick. It depends on how you draw your lowercase n, but it's neither here nor there. I digress. Um, the the point is when we're kind of at rest and we're low active, we can perform fairly well cognitively. But if we have some sort of low to moderate level of activity, our performance actually improves with low to moderate level of
Yes.
activity. But there is a point where that improvement starts diminishing to the point where you actually have decrease in performance. And when you're extremely exerted or you have an extremely high level of activity, you actually have diminished cognitive performance even below that initial resting state. So, with the way that I think would relate back to the research you cited is, I'd be curious to see how they controlled the exertion level of the activity for the fit population versus the moderately fit to the less fit population.
Yeah,
If that makes
so, well,
sense.
first of all, the way they compared the VO2 max of the people well, it was a meta-analysis. There's a
Okay.
meta-analysis that looked at a whole bunch of different studies, and they were using either extrapolated or actual, well, all the studies they used, sorry, used real VO2 max values um, that were based on College of Sports Medicine guidelines in the United States
Okay.
that
Hmm.
compared VO2 max scores of adults and kind of looked at whatever percentiles it was. So the low fitness were below the 20th percentile, and and then moderate fitness was between 20th and 59th, and then the high fitness was above the 60th percentile. So that U shape doesn't apply as much to the people who are above the 60th percentile in terms of their overall fitness.
I wonder though, is that given a certain like a level of exertion during the activity, or
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that okay?
yes, yeah.
And is that normalized to what they can actually perform, what their capacity is? So if someone's working and doing a VO2 max and they're actually hitting their max, my assumption, and again, this isn't my area of expertise, but my assumption is everyone's going to see a diminished cognitive performance,
Well, yeah,
even the most
I
fit
think
people.
during a VO2 max test, but this wasn't. This was just
Yeah,
this was exercise, right?
yeah, okay.
And it was during an acute bout of exercise that they did it.
Hmm.
So it was like they had them do some kind of a thing. So
Yeah,
because it was so many different studies, it's
it's hard to yeah say. I see what you're saying.
sometimes they were on a treadmill, sometimes they were on a bicycle, sometimes they were doing hand pedaling, so there was a whole bunch of different things that they were doing, but overall they found this overall effect. But
Yeah,
interestingly enough, I think a really interesting thing is that with different kinds of activity, that there's different kinds of benefit. So some kinds of exercise seem to benefit working memory, and some kinds of exercise seem to benefit like cognitive. I'm almost saying I'm trying to say a cognitive elasticity, but that
yeah.
like fluid.
Or like logic or decision making or something that's not necessarily
Yeah,
working memory, but another
yeah.
cognitive like task.
So they've done some studies with varied exercise programs with like balancing and multi-limb coordinations and things that are kind of more like play, and then they also tested executive function in some children
Yeah,
in another play-based thing, and the kind of open-based play kind of mode of exercise had better benefits overall than a regimented kind of straight up
now
aerobic kind of a thing.
that's really cool too that you
Yeah,
mentioned that, because it's not necessarily just the type of activity, but I'm going to go back and hammer a point that you really like to make, and I like it when you make it, is that whole intent idea.
yeah,
And so if it's like the intent is free play, you're saying that's even potentially, especially for children, that's more beneficial than some sort of like sport or regimented activity
yeah.
that they're doing.
Well, and
Awesome.
in rats, there's for rats who are allowed to play, there's actually genesis of new neurons in the hippocampus when they do play-based activities that are
Okay.
more than just running on a wheel. So things that
Yeah.
are so they when they look at the rat brains afterwards, they can see that there's been this development of these little neurons in a place that's really important for learning and memory. And
That
so and in some cases they see increases in white matter and hyperintensity too, like they saw that in mice, but
we're
yeah.
we're
So
really we're
go.
getting down to the last minute here, and there's one last thing I want to tease, and I actually don't think we're going to have enough time to go into
Well,
any
that's too
depth in
bad
this,
because
which
we
is
haven't even
concerning.
talked about my research yet on this very topic.
We're gonna have to do another week of this,
Oh
because I was
man,
just I
oh
was
man.
curious about the idea. So it sounds like you can use exercise, and there's potential, at least if you increase your fitness, you can increase your cognitive performance to a certain extent, or at least there's an association with that. So
Yeah,
whatever the
it
compounding factors are,
it does
I
seem pretty hopeful.
yeah, I wonder if looking even further forward, and this is a word I like to use sometimes, but is there a prophylactic effect? And I'm thinking in terms of dementia or even just any general diminished cognitive ability through aging. Is there a benefit there? Because we talked a lot a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago, about activity and aging, but we did it a lot from a musculoskeletal perspective.
Right.
We didn't do activity and aging from a cognitive
Yeah,
perspective.
and there's a
So
lot to be said there. There's
yeah,
a whole bunch of stuff to be
yeah.
said
So
there. Yeah,
maybe we put a pin in that
I
one
think
for
so.
another week. But are there any final closing thoughts that you want
Yeah.
to share? Okay.
So I think a really important thing to say is that in everything that we've been talking about, this is kind of like a general thing, right? And it applies to chronic levels of activity. What I mean by that is that you don't do it once and see a huge benefit. It's kind of like I've been working out or I've been running or I've been doing
Mm-hmm,
something
mm-hmm.
over a period of months, and that's going to slowly bring up my cognitive performance
Yeah.
overall. Particularly, the fitter I get, the more the benefit I'll see post exercise, especially as I get really fit. While I'm doing it, might not see benefits, and in fact, you might see some diminishment. So there will either
Mm-hmm.
be no improvement, or you might even see you'll see some cost to
Yeah,
doing
depending
it.
on the intensity. If you're doing it at a really high intensity, I
Exactly,
think we've
exactly.
shown that.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is really important. And then the last thing to say is that the kind of activity seems to have some kind of impact on the way that you learn or what kind of uh, aspect of cognitive behavior is changed.
Yeah. My closing thought is just to hit home that second message you said and to tie it back into this becomes a theme, I think, across all of our memo chats is being active needs to be a lifestyle choice and it needs
Yeah,
to be habitual. You need to do it every day because I'm thinking back to our talk about activity and COVID and how we kind of talked about being habitually active could be a prophylactic to preventing severe outcomes when it comes to people contracting the coronavirus.
but
And
also in depression. In the case of depression, it's a
another
prophylactic
theme,
there. It's a
exactly.
prophylactic in aging. Like
It,
if
like
yeah,
we're going to talk about in future weeks. So the
yeah,
idea, but it's always habitual. It's not
yeah.
like, hey, I can go for one run and I'm going to be better, or hey, I can go for a walk today and I can walk for let's say 10 kilometers and
Yeah,
I'll be immediately better. It's like no, you need to be committed to being active and incorporating that into your lifestyle and make it
absolutely.
habitual.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's a really great point. I
good
love
point.
that theme
Yeah,
that it seems to be a theme across all of our memo chats, which
it's
I
true.
really,
It's true, Thomas.
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like it's included right in the very name of this whole thing. Move early, move often.
Move on to
And
the
thank
often, yeah.
and I have you to thank for that for bringing
Uh,
that to me.
yeah, no, I'm really enjoying these. Thanks, Blake. Hoping we can talk again next
All
week.
right, take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.